Right now, across America, families are watching the news and asking the same question. What else is hiding in those Epstein files? And how does it affect the future of the country your kids are growing up in? This story isn't just about one man. It's about power, secrets, and decisions made behind closed doors that may have shaped politics, business, and even the economy you depend on every single day. And tonight, there's a new twist that's sending shockwaves through Washington and beyond. In the past few weeks, millions of pages of previously hidden documents tied to Jeffrey Epstein have begun pouring into public view. Lawmakers are now reviewing unredacted files, documents that were once blacked out line by line. And what they're seeing is raising serious questions. For years, Americans were told the truth would eventually come out. But now, as lawmakers and investigators sift through the material, some are claiming names were protected, details were hidden, and the full picture still hasn't been revealed. And here's why this matters to you. When powerful people are shielded from consequences, trust in institutions collapses, markets react, policies change, and everyday Americans, the ones paying taxes, raising families, and saving for retirement, are often the ones who end up paying the price. So tonight, we're breaking down exactly what's in these files, what lawmakers are discovering, and why the story is far from over. The massive document dump nobody expected. The scale of this release is staggering. The Justice Department has already published millions of pages of documents, including photos, emails, videos, and investigative records connected to Epstein's operations. To put that into perspective, we're not talking about a single report or a few folders. We're talking about entire digital archives, evidence collected over years of investigations. Some reports estimate more than 3 million pages were released in one major batch alone. But even that may be just the beginning. Officials say millions more documents are still under review, with hundreds of lawyers working to sort through the material. Why the delay? Authorities say they must protect the identities of victims and their families. That means every page must be reviewed carefully before it goes public. Still, critics say the pace has been too slow and too selective. Some lawmakers claim key names were hidden in earlier releases, sparking new calls for transparency and accountability. And that's where the real controversy begins. Lawmakers see the unredacted truth. In a dramatic move, members of Congress have now been given access to unredacted versions of certain Epstein documents. That means they're seeing material that the public hasn't seen yet. Names, details, and connections that were previously blacked out. And according to reports, some lawmakers say the redactions may have protected at least 6 individuals from public scrutiny. They haven't publicly named those individuals yet, but the mere suggestion that names were intentionally hidden has ignited political outrage on both sides of the aisle. Imagine being an American family watching this unfold. You pay taxes, you follow the rules, you trust the system, and then you hear that powerful figures might have been shielded from exposure. That's the emotional core of this story. It's not just about documents, it's about fairness, justice, and whether the system treats everyone the same. And as lawmakers continue reviewing these files, they're warning that more revelations could be coming. The powerful names already surfacing. Even before the latest unredacted reviews, the newly released files were already making headlines for one reason: the number of powerful figures mentioned in the documents. Reports say the files include communications and connections involving some of the world's wealthiest and most influential people. These aren't just random names. They include major business leaders, global figures, and political insiders. Now, it's important to understand something critical. Being named in a document does not automatically mean wrongdoing. Some individuals appear simply because they had contact with Epstein in social or professional contexts. But in the court of public opinion, that nuance often gets lost. Headlines travel faster than facts, and as names surface, reputations, careers, and even markets can feel the impact. For everyday Americans, this raises a deeper concern. How much influence did Epstein's network have over business deals, political decisions, or financial systems that affect your daily life? That's the question investigators are now trying to answer. The FBI findings that changed everything. One of the most disturbing revelations in the files comes from internal records reviewed by investigators. According to reports, the FBI found proof that Epstein had sexually abused underage girls. This confirmation isn't just a detail, it's a turning point. It reinforces the scale and seriousness of the crimes involved and raises new questions about how the system handled the case for so many years. For families across America, this part of the story hits hardest. Parents see their own children in the victims. They ask how someone with so much wealth and influence was able to operate for so long, and that emotional reaction is fueling the demand for transparency. Because when crimes of this magnitude involve powerful circles, Americans want to know who knew, who helped, and who looked the other way. The redaction controversy explodes. Now we get to the political firestorm. Lawmakers who reviewed unredacted files claim some names were hidden in earlier public releases. That means the documents Americans saw may not have told the full story. In fact, reports say that at least 6 individuals may have been shielded by those redactions. In response, the Justice Department has begun lifting some of those redactions, revealing names that were previously concealed. This back and forth between lawmakers and federal agencies is creating a new level of tension in Washington. Each side claims they're fighting for transparency, but the process has left many Americans confused. Who decides what gets hidden? Who decides what gets revealed? And how long did these redactions stay in place? Those questions are now at the center of the debate. Millions of pages still hidden. Here's the part that may surprise you most. Even after the massive document dumps, millions of pages may still be under review. Officials say more than 2 million documents are still being processed before they can be released publicly. That means the story is far from finished. Hundreds of lawyers and analysts are working around the clock, trying to balance transparency with the need to protect victims' identities. But critics say this process could drag on for weeks or even longer, and that creates uncertainty. When information comes out in waves instead of all at once, it keeps the story alive in headlines, political debates, and financial markets. For everyday Americans, uncertainty is never good news. It affects confidence, stability, and trust in the system. The political fallout begins. As more details emerge, the political fallout is already starting. Lawmakers on both sides are demanding more transparency, faster releases, and clearer explanations about what was redacted and why. Some are even pushing for outside oversight to manage the document releases, arguing that the process shouldn't be controlled by the same agencies involved in the original investigations. This could turn into a major political issue heading into future elections, especially if new names or connections emerge. And when political scandals grow, they don't stay in Washington. They affect policy debates, financial markets, and the economic environment families live in every day. Why this story matters to your future. At first glance, this might feel like just another political scandal. But the Epstein files represent something deeper. They touch on the relationship between wealth, power, and justice. They raise questions about whether the system protects the rich and punishes the rest. And that matters to your wallet more than you might think, because trust in institutions affects everything, from interest rates and investment confidence to government spending and economic stability. When Americans lose faith in the system, markets react, policies shift, and the ripple effects eventually reach household budgets. So this story isn't just about what happened years ago. It's about the future, your retirement, your savings, and the kind of country your children will inherit. The question everyone is asking. Across the country, one question keeps coming up in living rooms, workplaces, and on social media. What happens next? For years, Americans were told that the full truth about Epstein's network would eventually come to light. Now that documents are finally surfacing, the public is realizing something unsettling. This may be a long, slow process, not a single dramatic reveal. And that uncertainty affects you more than you might think. When major scandals unfold, they don't just stay in the headlines. They shape public trust, government priorities, and economic decisions that ripple all the way down to your paycheck and your retirement account. Think about it. When trust in institutions drops, investors become cautious, businesses hold back on expansion, lawmakers focus on damage control instead of economic growth, and those shifts can quietly affect job markets, interest rates, and even the price of everyday essentials. Right now, Americans are watching to see whether this investigation leads to real accountability or just more questions. Will powerful names face consequences? Will new laws be passed? Will agencies change the way they handle investigations like this? Because at the end of the day, this isn't just about the past. It's about whether the system works for ordinary people, whether justice is truly equal, and whether the future will look different from the mistakes of the past. That's why so many families are glued to this story. They're not just watching for headlines, they're watching for signs that the system can still be trusted. The role of media and public pressure. One of the biggest forces driving this story forward isn't happening inside courtrooms or congressional offices. It's happening in public view, through media coverage, social platforms, and everyday conversations among Americans. For years, many people believed the full story would never come out, but public pressure kept the issue alive. Journalists kept asking questions, victims kept speaking out, and eventually, the demand for transparency became too loud to ignore. Now, with millions of documents being reviewed and more revelations expected, the media spotlight is stronger than ever. Every new detail sparks debate. Every headline fuels new questions. And that constant attention is pushing officials to move faster and explain more. But there's a downside too. In the age of viral headlines, misinformation can spread just as fast as real news. Names get mentioned without context, rumors become trending topics, and before long, it becomes hard for everyday Americans to separate fact from speculation. That's why it's more important than ever to stay informed and pay attention to credible updates. Because in a story this complex, the truth often comes out piece by piece, not in one dramatic moment. And for families watching at home, the key is patience and awareness. The story is still developing, the facts are still being uncovered, and the full picture may take time to emerge. As we close this update, one thing is clear. This story is far from finished. Millions of pages are still under review. Lawmakers are still examining unredacted documents. Legal battles may still be ahead, and new revelations could surface at any moment. For Americans, that means the coming months could bring major headlines, unexpected developments, and possibly even historic consequences. But in times like these, the most important thing you can do is stay informed. Because knowledge helps you make smarter decisions about your money, your future, and your family's security. Watch the updates, follow the facts, and don't get lost in the noise. Because stories like this don't just shape the news cycle. They shape the country your children will grow up in. They influence the economy you depend on. And they affect the system that's supposed to protect you. So stay alert, stay informed, and stay ready for what comes next. Because the next update could change everything.